Hello everybody, my name is Daniel Hill and welcome to the third video of 10. If you've watched my other two videos then you will know quite a bit about me already. So I did my history in video 1, look at my notes here, and number 2 was what it actually is. And I actually started to talk a little bit about what the subject is in this one, which is how can I begin to treat it. So if you watch the last one, you'll be able to see I actually picked up this book, which is still top of the pile, called The Healing Code by Dermot O'Connor, who had multiple sclerosis, not ME, so it's MS. But there are so many books out there, there are so many things that I did. So that was one thing that I did, and that's part of NLP, because what we did in here was cover sort of part of what he calls in this book the psychology of health recovery. And that's the same with all illness, and it's with all manifestation. You need to be able to sense it, not always, but most things. It's be able to build the belief that that reality is possible, to sense it first. So you sense it on the inside, and that's by seeing it, hearing it, and feeling it. And everybody's senses are different slightly, but with a lot of people it's usually VAK, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Kinesthetic means feeling. And then you've got your other senses such as taste and smell as well. And don't discount those. So I made one small note, and I'm going to make an hour-long video on what I can do to begin to treat ME and chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. By now you'll understand that if I'm saying ME, I mean C.F.S, because these videos get seen all over the world. When I was really ill, I used to speak to my uncle, who's the same personality type as me, that's the same Enneagram type. I've mentioned the Enneagram quite a few times. That's another part of healing. I might mention that today. It's another part. The Enneagram is a tool that you can use to enable you to grow psychologically as well as spiritually. And it's something that I have immersed myself in, really, since finding it out 11 years ago. I'd also say today is 13 years to the day that I was still in a coma of sorts, because it was this week it was on a Tuesday in November 2004, and I went to bed on a Monday evening at 9 o'clock, having taken some lethal concoction of alcohol and sleeping tablets, and I awoke the next day at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. So I'm recording this now at 3:25. I was still comatose. So my reality has shifted massively from that in 13 years, and people have sometimes asked me how long it took. All I can say is that I saw steady improvement. The more I did this kind of work, it just became about understanding that I needed to continue to work on myself, work on my limiting beliefs, work on the creation of the reality of health and of peace. I then started qualifying in all of this, all that I do, and then I started building up a business. And all these things take time. Depends on your personality and depends on your limiting beliefs how long they're going to take. But everyone can create the reality that they would love to experience, or at the very least move towards it. And even if you only got 5% of it or 10% of it, is that worth doing? Well, when I was doing all of this stuff, yes it was. I was absolutely committed to creating a better reality for myself, even if it meant that I was never going to get better. But if I had a little more peace, if I had a little more ease in my life, if I had a little more money, or if I was doing something that I enjoyed doing. So this was something, psychology was something that always fascinated me from the age of 16. So this is something else that you can do. So how can you begin to treat it? One of the things is to begin to do things that you love doing, because you're getting into the energy of the heart rather than the energy of the head. In anybody who's got a serious disease, that's a serious unease up here, which is going all of the time, which is creating a physiological experience within the body. I'm not saying it's the answer, but it's part of the whole picture. It might be the one thing that helps people who aren't so sick with it. But, go into leading a heart-based reality. So that's doing things being led by your heart rather than led by your mind. Do things that you would love to do. Some people take up photography, or they begin to paint, or they begin to do, if they've got enough energy, do things like a little bit like, amateur dramatics, or I don't know, there might be just like getting out into nature and cycling, just a tiny bit, just the fact that, or even just a tiny walk, or doing something where they're in nature, because if you're so ill and all that you ever see is four walls, even if you were a well person and you incarcerated them, and all they ever saw was four walls, well, this is what they do with prisoners at segregation. They put them in solitary confinement because it's the worst thing that you could possibly be experiencing. And I remember having days and days and days never ever leaving a flat, and then realising that actually when I went to go and see, this is when I was living with Cheltenham with my older girlfriend, 20 years ago, she'd come back from work and she'd say, "Have you been out today?" And I felt like an expensive pet. I was 10 years younger than her. And I was like 22, 23, and I was so ill I couldn't even leave the flat. I ripped up the Christmas cards one year because I hadn't even got the confidence to get to the post box. I mean, that sounds ridiculous now, but that was a reality, and we're talking 20 years ago. I remember just going out, and they had, over in Pittville in Cheltenham, there was had some animals that you could go and see, like a pet corner or something like that. And I have a feeling I went out to go and listen. There were some birds, and just to make my way over there, which might have taken about 3-4 minutes for and a well person, took 20 or 25 minutes to crawl over there, step by step, just so I could be participating in life, feel the wind on my face, feel the temperature outside, look at the leaves, go and look at the animals, or sometimes it was just simply going up and looking at watching birds, or looking at feeding ducks, or just watching ducks, or observing nature, or just getting to a park bench and just being. There's something else that I've noticed having watched myself back from those videos, is that I'm talking very fast. And I don't talk that fast in life. What I've noticed when I was doing a longer video, I was well aware of that I've got lots of information and that I wanted to impart that, and as much information as possible, except that I did talk very fast, and then that's my fear of not communicating enough. And I realised watching back, going, Daniel, that's really a little bit too fast. People I've got fast minds with chronic fatigue syndrome, but that's not helpful. Maybe slowing things down is a little bit easier. So less is more. So I'm going to become more conscious of being more slow, and hopefully that will manifest into you understanding me and wishing to go through the remainder of these 10 hours. 10 hours listening to me? Goodness. Okay. So the one thing that I made a note of was, when I contacted my uncle, who's the same Enneagram type as me, an Enneagram type 6/5, who's pretty unhealthy, still has a lot of stress, and actually it's led to a stroke. Ironically, paralysed him down the left-hand side of my body, which usually happens with strokes. He was very good to me. I'm Cancerian, he's Pisces, but he understood my psychology, and he'd suffered a lot with mental health issues, because his childhood was very, very difficult, like my father's was, and thus my father treated me in a certain way because he'd had all of his issues. My uncle asked me once to write down my fears, because he didn't, although he accepted that I'd got chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, and fibromyalgia, and he visited me in hospital wonderfully, and I remember him taking me round the ward, and I was in a wheelchair, and he took me down, and there were very few people who did that, and he said, "It's important for you to get out of the ward, I'll get you in the wheelchair." I was so ill. No, he actually took me down, and I remember we went down and just had a drink somewhere, and it was just, wow, yeah, I did feel a bit different, feel a bit better, just that change of scene. And but he got me, when I got back home, and he knew I suffered with depression and anxiety. He didn't see the correlation between that and what I was suffering with. But he said to me, write down your fears. So I wrote down my fears once, and so I took an A4 piece of paper, lined A4 piece of paper. How many lines are on that? 25? And I filled up the whole of one side, and I filled up the whole other side And then I had columns. So I think I divided it into columns. So let's say I had over 100 fears, and each one of them was a 10, a 9, or an 8 out of 10. So it's like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. They were all like massive phobias. So it was almost like just being phobic of life. And I'm an Enneagram type 6/5. The Enneagram type 6s can be counterphobic or phobic. Counterphobic version is like Hitler, N&M. Phobic type is Meg Ryan, popular culture, phobic type 6. Ellen, American, Ellen DeGeneres. And me, the phobic type, when they're carrying lots of stuff, and if you've watched my previous video, which was all that stuff piled up on here, a phobic Enneagram type 6 is with lots of dysfunctional childhood and stuff, held stuff that's still in the unconscious, is going to find that they're literally phobic to life. I've been working as a clinical hypnotherapist now for, 11 and a half years. And phobic type 6s, like myself, are some of the worst to treat if you're helping them get over a phobia, because they're literally phobic of life. They're second guessing what you're doing. They're just naturally phobic anyway, and skeptical and suspicious about what you're doing. I mean, I've had a few clients come and see me, and sometimes they've been foreign. I've seen them on the internet, or they've come in person. You do a standard procedure with them. You do a standard work with them doing something like NLP, hypnosis, EFT, and there's a load of other tools that I use as well, that I just promote that I use. You can get small shifts, but not the same shift as if you were working with another Enneagram type or somebody with a different kind of issue. Phobic type 6s on phobias are interesting and challenging, and I've had mixed results because I had mixed results. Whenever I got into this and was doing inner work and shifting my fears, like those 100 fears, and I had to work on those individually to an extent. You start working on some and they'll collapse others and they'll take others down with them. So, let's say you work on issue number 7, it actually, once you resolve that one, issue number 54, it's kind of related. So it's almost like it's like a great big forest, and the forest of fears, and you take one tree down and it will take other trees with it, and thus you lead to more deforestation. But I was working on certain fears, and they would take a long time to go. So the procedure was done, hypnosis, NLP, EFT, or whatever, and other people were doing it with me who was training with on the course, and I just wasn't being that much less phobic. Like, this should work. And I remember when I was doing it and training and thinking, I can't possibly have the congruence of going into being a therapist and coach and mentor when this stuff clearly doesn't work. And I did mention how Alex Howard sort of mentored me for 18 months. And rightly so. I think after 18 months, I think he kind of just thought, this guy really needs to get experience on his own, which is what he told me in the end. And and he said, you need to be doing that for 6 months or 12 months at least, because I was still so skeptical of it. This was even sort of back after being at the clinic for 18 months, because that doubting part of my mind, which was always going, yeah, but I don't know if it does work. Because I wasn't having the leaps and bounds that I thought that it would, which kind of comes from stage hypnosis. We see sort of people who have stage hypnosis and, they believe something, and then within a short amount of time they're believing something else. Well, when you're working with, why did I put this top on? When you're working with other personality types who are congruent with shifting and change and are more trusting, you get great shifts, and that they only pick those people to do that kind of stage hypnosis work. When people want to be made fun of, they want to get up to the stage, or they want to be on TV, or they're accepting, and they're going with the information that's being told to them, and they're a willing participant. Where and it's almost 100% willing. Whereas when you're working with somebody when they're resistant, there's a part of you that doesn't want to let the issue go, and you've got to be at the level and threshold where you're just going to be, you're going to let it go. And as much as if I grabbed somebody off the street and they were still smoking and went, "Hey, I'm a hypnotherapist and I can help you quit smoking," I'm not going to be that successful if they don't want to quit smoking. So unless you absolutely wish to overcome your fears, and I'm talking absolutely and are dedicated doing it, to as much as like where I was, if you saw where I was talking about house spiders, I just wanted to get over the fear of spiders, even though I'd had 3 sessions of hypnotherapy back in 2000, and in order to get over it, and then I'd also been to see a clinical psychologist on the NHS in the early 90s, because I never thought I'd be able to leave home, go to college, because my unconscious just reacted to spiders in a huge way. I thought I'd never be able to go to university. I was literally so phobic of them, and my dad just came and dealt with them. I mean, that's the level of fear I was running. It's absolutely kind of preposterous. It's kind of crazy. One of the things you can do in order to be able to get better is to write down your issues. Write down your issues and begin to work on them. And work on them in whatever way. But of course, I'm going to sell myself here and say, I've got masses of experience. I'm somebody who has been there, and coming to me and having sessions every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, and looking at making steady improvement. I mean, I coach people to coach themselves. I'm basically relaying all that has worked for me and using my experience of helping other people who've had it. I mean, a lot of my friends who were on the course when I was studying, we were doing swaps because we were all learning these techniques and these therapies and tools, and so we were using them on one another. And I got my first experience of being a therapist really by working with my fellow students, and they had chronic fatigue syndrome, and you could see, hey, you speak to them a few days later, and they're like, yeah, my symptoms are a little less, and I was able to do this, and I was able to do that, and it becomes quite common sense after a while that, yeah, of course, that's what serious disease is. It's that somebody's not in a sense of ease. They're in a sense of complete overwhelm for whatever reason. I mean, we kind of know what the reasons are because of dysfunctional childhood, but there can be traumas as well, and there just can be life circumstances. And, it's incredibly rewarding when you work with someone who's really sick, regardless of what illness that they've got, and you see how they're overcoming their issues and their challenges, and most usually that has a profound effect on symptoms, and they're starting to move towards health. So one thing that you can do is that literally go and seek someone, and I'm a guy who's had lots of experience and been there myself, and I really am ready to help people who've got chronic fatigue syndrome and help them move forward. But what other things could you do? Meditation is something that is there to aid you in being. If you think that, why do we meditate? Why do we sit and why do we relax in that kind of way? It's to aid you to slow down that overthinking mind, that worrying mind, that fearful mind, the mind that is always seeking something outside of itself. Ego, ego, everything good is outside. The mind doesn't ever stop enough to think, just to be, to go within. With serious disease, the ego is always much more. And it's understandable, because if you've got a serious disease, you're going to be more frightened because you've got one. You might feel that you haven't got as much love, and you might feel that you haven't got control. It's a time to really work on yourself, because the more that you do, the more that you'll get a payoff, paradoxically, in feeling better. And by coming out of your ego, you're feeling more the sense of being and flow in life. And it's like when they say let go and let God, or let go and let life, it's the fact that you're realizing you're not in control, and life is in control, and it's safe to trust life. That's a big one with chronic fatigue syndrome. You'll find that there isn't a trust in life. There is a feeling of going against it, and where sort of spiritual teachings are about really just letting go, and it's like allowing yourself to go downstream, allowing yourself to be in the river, and allowing yourself just to flow, going where life takes you. I didn't really set this is my reality and go, right, this is what I'm going to do and what I'm going to become and all the rest of it. For example, I've got masses of videos out there regarding the Enneagram. I just literally fell in love with that. And I've used that with clients: depression, anxiety, sadness, stress at work, stress in the relationship, so non-health issues. And sometimes I do a smattering of EFT or a bit of NLP, some hypnosis maybe, a few other interventions or something else. Except the big thing that we work on is psychology, and we work using the Enneagram. I mean, I fell in love with that. Really the Enneagram found me rather than I found it. I remember doing it on the course with Alex years and years ago. And Alex at the time, bless him, he was thinking he was an Enneagram type 6, and I think it's quite obvious he's an Enneagram type 3. And he might well have shared that. I don't follow him anymore, and I'm not sure, but I have massive amounts of love for him. And if it wasn't for Alex, I might never be here. He wasn't just the only one. There were lots of people, but I will always consider him a brother and someone who was on my path, on my soul path, in order to help me and to assist me. And the right person came at the right time, and there were lots of other things. But it was Alex who introduced me to the Enneagram because it was on part of the NLP course that I was studying with him. The certificate in diploma in life coaching, NLP, hypnotherapy, and what I do. And I ended up calling myself an Enneagram mentor because I started to see clients and start to recognize their patterns. And then I began to introduce the Enneagram into sessions. And eventually it became like quarter of the session, third of the session, half of the session, and then sometimes complete sessions were all about evolving their Enneagram type. And sometimes then it became almost the entire 5-session package or more became all about evolving their Enneagram type. And it's something that there's not many other people who do that, and it's something that I love, and it's something that I think I will always do on some level to some degree. I'm pretty much Enneagram obsessed, but it's not about obsessing about the ego and the issues regarding about it that come from it. It's more about evolving and using it as a tool so you can experience your essence, experience what exists underneath the ego, the true you, the essence of who you are, the authentic you that isn't afraid, that is no longer putting up that fear because it's afraid of life, no longer putting up a defense, and no longer needing to promote the self all of the time. That's a lot of hand movements. Anyway, don't do it second time. All right, okay, carry on. This is the kind of neurology of a 6. We're kind of a little bit funny. We kind of think about things a little bit too much. But I've evolved that so much over the years. I'm going to my heart there because I've learned and trained myself to come more into my heart than in my head. Most 6s will just live their lives in their head. They're like meerkats. They're like, the top meerkat. There's one meerkat that's always on the lookout. Always on the lookout for danger. Well, what if you could relax that meerkat? What if you could say, hey, it's time for a little bit of fun. Maybe we're safe already. Maybe it's fine and we can trust life. Because that's what happens. You're still the meerkat, and you still have the tendency to do this. But you can almost laugh at yourself and laugh at sort of the craziness that happens and goes on. Because right now, I don't need to be stressed out. All I'm doing is just talking to a camera, to this little thing here. And I could edit it. I could choose to go and put on a different shirt. Every now and again, I'm thinking, why is this not staying quite here? I wear this when I see clients, but now it's kind of going down. I'm not feeling 100% about that, but I'm going to upload it anyway. I don't think you bother about looking at my shirt. You want to get better. Right. So, how can I begin to treat it? Keep reminding myself that. So meditation is something. EFT, if you haven't come across EFT, if you haven't come across emotional freedom techniques or something called TFT, which is thought field therapy, or any other meridian therapy. And meridian therapies is about the energy within your body. It's about aligning the energy. Anything to do with that, it's just going to help you Sessions are great to have with people, but there are also lots of videos out there that you can use, and you can use and learn the technique and use it on yourself. Sessions are going to benefit you in order to bring down some of those fears. One of the things that I do is to get clients to make a peace list, and that's a list of their fears. And we go through that, most usually with serious disease, and we're making peace on that list. We're bringing those 8s, 9s and 10s down to anything. I kind of feel if it's below a 3, we can move on to the next issue. And it's a wonderful tool, of which there are many, but I highly, highly recommend that. I think another part of me getting better was getting into nature, walking, even though I couldn't walk far, but any kind of walking is going to get your body back into a state of being in alignment, and even if it's so small, we're not built to stay in a property and never leave it. You know, we're beings that need to engage and interact and to be part of life, and just even the smallest amount of movement is just going to begin to fire up your system and get it into a place where it's working again. You know, I remember reading sort of like an article about people who have too much at Christmas. You know, these are healthy people, so they're eating too much chocolate, drinking too much wine or booze and all the rest of it. And it said, look, you don't need to go full on for detoxing. All you need to do is just drink water, clean water, and make sure that you're walking or just a little exercise. Obviously, when you're really sick, you know, and if you haven't walked, some people might be watching these and they're bedridden. And then that might be that you just get up, you know, okay, it might be awful to walk to the bathroom or whatever, but you do that in a mindful way, and just understanding that doing a little bit more, and it can be the minute tiny bit more, that you're going to get yourself into a place where you're behaving like a normal body behaves. You know, if you're sick and you're in bed and you're not doing anything, it's not the best place for you. Obviously, if you're really sick and you're under doctor's orders, then that's what you must do. But I know, like when I was hospitalised for a month, after a while, you know, I really was don't know what you'd call it, hospital fever, cabin fever. Well, I had a fever, but I just needed to get out. I needed to do something. I needed to engage. And I remember going out, actually writing one day. I just about had enough energy, and I went out and I wrote on this big A4 pad, off to do Tai Chi in the garden. And I had all these people looking out the hospital window, like the nurses and the patients. And there I am, and I'm like, you know, going like this, doing my Tai Chi. And just to be able to do something that helped me just to feel a sense of calm and oneness. I mean, if you want to do this right now, just do this. Just lift your hands up. Imagine that they're just waves. Anything that brings you into a sense of being. There's another thing like this. Just pull your hands across and just follow your hand. And follow your hand. And follow your hand. And follow your hand. This is a little bit of Tai Chi. And a little bit of Qigong. Okay. Take your energy down to your center, so down to your tummy button. Just hold imagine you're holding a big ball of energy. Just take some breaths from there. Good. Just imagine you're holding a ball of chi, a ball of energy down there. Lift the ball up. Imagine it's the sun, and bring it down all the way through your body. Just to let it settle again, right where your tummy button is. Holding a big ball of energy down there. That was called the Dantian Center, I remember how calling that. Just close your eyes. Just take your energy just down there. Take your energy just down there. Okay, and open your eyes. And can you still stay down there even though you're looking at me? Can you still breathe while your attention is all the way down in the pit of your stomach, deep down in your belly? Can you be there? respond back if that was a good experience or bad experience. But if it was a bad experience, just let it go. Just find something, place your hands over your heart, breathe in, and open your eyes. Just connect to your heart. This is good because it's just connecting to other energy centers away from your head. The thing with serious disease is that it's perpetual thinking and it's perpetual head energy. And so it's very useful to become aware of other energy inside of you. So you have head, heart, and gut, and even higher self, which would be all the way up here. And that's, very briefly, a part of me that I got in contact with, which was just an energy or an awareness of that. It was an inner guide. It was helping me to move forward, and I wouldn't be where I am without it. It was there. I always checked in with my gut, checked in with my heart. My head might have been going, no, I don't want to do it. But my higher self was always saying, this is the right path, Daniel. This is the right path. This is the right path. And I might have been kicking and screaming all the way there. My ego might have been going absolutely terrifying. But it was the right thing, and it did help me. It was there. And the higher self is really just, it's like the soul path. It's there. It's not afraid about your survival. It just knows what's the highest and best for you, what will help you on this journey as a soul being in this body, having an experience. If that's too much for you to get into and it feels a bit airy-fairy, then just look upon it as sort of like, just a part of you that just thinks that it's kind of like an inner healer. It's like that, if your brain, if you cut yourself, for example, do you wait every day going, please heal, please heal, please heal? The mind just does that automatically, and there's no effort that goes there. But we also have other parts of ourselves that that operate effortlessly, and this is another part that's just there going, this is the right path for you, and that will be life, and it will be effortless for you, and that's the thing. Say effortless. It's like the path of least resistance. There's still effort required, and I still have to overcome masses of limiting beliefs, masses of mental stuff and blockages and all the rest of it in order to do this. But what was in my heart was I absolutely love psychology and I love spirituality. So when I found the Enneagram, it wouldn't be too much of a surprise where, you look at that as the complete guide to psychological and spiritual growth for the 9 personality types. I went, psychology and spirituality together sounds like something for me. And I just loved it, and I still do to this day. It kind of made every kind of resonated with me. So that is something to get into also, the Enneagram. What else can help me? Learning about your Enneagram type and finding out how to become healthy and evolve. For example, let's just open this very briefly. Here we go. Let's have a look at the Enneagram type. It's fallen on the Enneagram type 4. There's a table of health. So as you become healthy in mind, see healthy there? Average, unhealthy. As you become healthy in mind, guess what? You can become healthy in body too. And this works with if you're a drug addict. This works if you're a workaholic. This works if you're addicted to social media, or you're famous, or anybody who's struggling in life is not going to be in the healthy part. When we're in the healthy part, we're letting to let go and let God, let go and let life. And then also finding out your type and then working out what that type is. And then what's absolutely beautiful, like here, which is, there are many books on the Enneagram, but I love this one particularly. This is sort of this talks about the emergence of essence here. And I used to read that for me as a 6, that would make me cry, because it was just so beautiful. It was everything that I wished to experience. It was talking about, like for me as the Enneagram type 6, that 6s let go and they learn to trust their guts and they feel like they're standing on a massive bed of granite. I mean, my brain would just go, what on earth is that? I wouldn't even know what it's like to trust on that level. I can't do that. It's impossible, you know. But I used to read it almost every day, and it became like my Bible. It became something for me to go to each and every time. It's actually bringing me a tiny little bit of emotion up, because it was something. It was an answer that I was looking for, and having a questioning mind that was so fearful all the time. It was the thing that I was looking for and had looked for in other religions and spiritual quests and all the rest of it. And it kind of just brought everything together, and it was like, oh my goodness, this makes sense. I get this. And I think it's quite pertinent today, since the day is the 13th. Hey, that's meant to be unlucky for some. Obviously not for me. I'm now making a video on the 13th anniversary of having nearly killed myself because I was so sick and ill. Ah, the paradox. So, what else can you do? What else can you do? Okay, so if your environment is bad, so let's say your physical environment, so where you're living, obviously, you know, that I've said before that people with chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, fibromyalgia, are like the canaries that go down the mines. They're usually very sensitive individuals. That's a book that you go and look at, The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron. I'm definitely a highly sensitive person, an extremely highly sensitive person. And that was something that was very useful. I think I've got about 5 of her books. I only read little bits of them, but it helped for me to accept myself that, you know, hey, I'm normal. I'm actually just a highly sensitive person. There's nothing wrong with me, but this is just my makeup. This is who I am. Obviously, if you're living by, you know, that you can have, I don't know what they call it, that kind of stress with mobile phones, or, you know, my ex-girlfriend would used to turn off the Wi-Fi even because, you know, she didn't have any, but she was sensitive and she just didn't want that energy around. There are mobile phone masts that are out there. There's all different types of energies. There's like all different like ley lines, and there's all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know enough about that, but I just used to trust my intuition of where I should be, and if the energy felt bad and what felt good, and I knew that tap water wasn't so good for me, so I just brought a Brita water filter. But so your environment, even sort of just the people, for example, such as parents, or it might be your spouse, it might be your husband, it might be your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend, or it could be that you're living with somebody. I mean, I lived with various few people, and some of the energy wasn't so good for me. The first time I left my ex-girlfriend of 10 years, I had only enough money, like £40 a week, to go and live in a place that, you know, there was... I didn't realise he was addicted to smoking marijuana, but that was everywhere, and it was like dirty, and, you know, he didn't lock the front door, and, you know, I mean, it served a purpose for a while, but within a short amount of time I was able to move out of there. And I found somewhere to live, and I shared a house, and just doing that helped me significantly, because I didn't have, like, you know, parents, or I didn't have like a girlfriend or anybody, you know, down my neck, which was a stress. It was like an ongoing stress. Even like my ex-girlfriend, it was like a stress to a certain degree, because I started to not be so much in love with her anymore, and realised that I needed to grow from being with somebody who was 10 years older than me, and it just wasn't quite right for a variety of reasons. So the people that you're around can affect you. Equally, you could spend too much time alone, and that being no good for you. So it might be that you engage with others that are good for you. You know, you realise your energy feels better when you're around them. They have a good energy, and you listen to your gut about that. I think it's important to listen to your intuition. That's a huge thing. Nature, I've said, is a wonderful thing to get in contact with, but use your intuition. Use your inner guidance. You know, inside of us there is a healer. You know, if we can cut ourselves and then that can heal itself, then even with all serious disease, why can we not heal? And it's the mind that's stopping us from healing, most usually. So using your intuition in order to help you take the action to create a better reality for yourself is a wonderful thing. Now it can be, that's where EFT, for example, I used when my intuition was saying to take certain action and I refused to take the action because I was afraid. I used something like EFT in order to be able to reduce the overwhelming feeling of taking that action. So, I mean, let's say, for example, let's say you're watching this and you're extremely sick and you can hardly get out at all. Then using EFT in order to be able to reduce the overwhelm of just being able to go for a very short walk could be hugely impactful for you. And then it could be, you know, you'll use it regarding going out to a social event or something. And again, you give yourself the permission and go into that social event that you're only going to stay there for a short amount of time, and that should you feel really poorly, that you will come away and you'll come back home or something. But I'd also say small steps. I never did anything in a huge way, anything. My whole rehabilitation was about small steps, small movements. I could say that going down, for example, and learning what I'm now practicing and using when I'm coaching people around the world was a massive step to go to London. But actually, was it, or was it? It was a step, but it wasn't so massive. I mean, after a while, I started catching the bus from Birmingham and going down. It cost me did I get like 20 quid return to go to London? And I was able to sleep on a friend's floor because I made friends on the course. And so I got, I cut my costs down. But I did find London overwhelming. But the reality was I was able to cope with it. And I didn't think I could. So I remember the first time I went down, feeling quite overwhelmed. It felt like a big step. But I'd exposed myself to that before. And I had been in London years before, just visiting. And I was able to do it. And it becomes more normal after a while. And so small steps rather than big steps will always help you. I think the thing is when we get ill or when we're in a place where we don't like to be, we're always searching for the big answer. Just want to find the one thing that's going to shift me from here to get to here. I'm not interested in getting to here. I'm only interested in getting here. But the reality is that we have to build the building blocks, or have to put the foundations in place in order to be able to get to here. And then when we get to here, then we get to here. And then we get to here, we get to here. And if you take too much of a step, even like this far, for example, have you ever heard the phrase, you take one step forward, two steps back? That's really, if you're taking a big step forward and it's too big for your unconscious goes, don't trust you. There's a part of you that wants to get here and it pushes all the way. But there's another part of you that's going, I'm not willing to let go of all of these fears just right now. And so if you take too much of a step forward and you're here, this part of the unconscious that's resistant goes, no way, Jose. And it goes one step back to square one and then goes, I don't trust you that much that I'm going to take you one step even off the grid. And then you're all the way back here. So it takes a while. It does that because it knows that this part, that is the part that wants to really move forward, is pushing. So I want to get better, or whatever it is. I want a new car, I want a boyfriend, I want a girlfriend, I want, and it's pushing. You're much better to accept where you are right now, make as much peace on where you are right now, and accept the isness of it. Not saying that it is bad or it is good. It just is. It's an experience, okay? And you're going to shift your consciousness because you're making a dedication to shifting your consciousness. And as you do that, you're going to be moving small. Now, if you take the small moves, okay, this part goes small, but you want to get here. That's going to take forever. Yet this part goes, well, I'm glad because, I really don't feel I've got the resources to be able to cope with living in this reality, because that's like, total wellness and everything that comes from there. That's like, responsibilities, and that's like life. And, sometimes, I know this sounds really hard, but I can remember falling back to being ill was almost like the safe retreat, because I knew that, okay, it was shit and really bad and I hated it, you know, and to the point I almost wanted to kill myself. But it was safe. It was something that I knew, and I could go back into that retreating place. So when I took big steps and then I kind of went back, it kind of like took me a while to learn. This is like the metaphor of the parable of the tortoise and the hare. Slow and steady wins the race, but there ain't no race to win. It's not like, hey, I have had people go, oh, congratulations, you're well now. And it's like, it feels weird, sort of like, it's like as if sort of like, oh, well, you know, a few years ago you won that race. No, I wasn't in a race. I wasn't. Congratulations. It just feels a bit weird. It's like sort of like going to somebody who's, let's say, who's been really poor once and has developed, you know, and grown a business, and then someone going, oh, well, congratulations, you know, you've got a really successful business. You don't really notice when you've got a successful business in that way, because I have now doing what I do. There wasn't a day where you wake up and go, oh, I am now successful. It's not, you don't have a day when you wake up and go, I am now well. Yesterday I was ill, but today I am well. It happened at 12:20, like when I was asleep at night. It's an expansion of your consciousness, and you don't notice it. It's like it's like one thing after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next. And like they say, you know, it's the straw that broke the camel's back. It's the other way, you know, it's the straw that, whatever positive metaphor you would like to use for that. It's just like, in Dermot's book, in The Healing Code, I'm sure he refers to a book which was called The Tipping the Balance. And he learned that from this book that basically, you know, things stack up, rather like those books that I put on one. It's like the scales, you know, sort of like, you know, you keep doing things. Let's try and do the scales in the right way. So, you know, let's say this is illness and this is health. You just keep doing things. You just keep doing things. And it's the same with any manifestation. Any manifestation. You just keep doing things. You just keep doing things. And you might not even notice the day when you just slightly tip into health. Because how different was it from that? But when you're ill, you're kind of like, I just want the thing which just makes me go woof. And the reality is it's a shift. It's a shift in your personal consciousness, in your reality. And it becomes more like this. And you shift that way. And it will take however long it takes. I think that was one of the things that I realised when I was on my journey. When I stopped being so... When I decided to break that pattern of sort of... what was it? It was getting better and then crashing, and then getting better and crashing and getting better. All that stuff was basically just taking two big steps. And the crashing part was me, my unconscious, taking me all the way back and further. So I was gaining, and eventually what you do is you do catch up, because if you've expanded this far, I'm going back to the old like metaphor that I had here, saying health was here and this was about small steps. When the unconscious expands to a new reality, so if you have got here before, okay, but you've already gone back, let's say through taking big steps, it's still going to be positive for you, because if you've built the reality that you have got here, even though you crashed, your unconscious has gone, well, I did manifest that. I did get there. Okay, you haven't fully built in the resource that this is completely and utterly safe, but you have said that you've touched here and that you've survived and you've been okay, which will mean at some point, when your consciousness catches up with you, you will be able to get back to that level. You will be able to get to that place at some point. But if you take small steps, there's been no crashes, both part, the part that wants to move forward, the part that's resistant, the part that's afraid, you will naturally get there with less crashes. You're never going to be able to do it completely without a little crash, because you've always got to find that balance. There's always going to be a part of you that's too fearful and stuck and won't move forward at all, and you're going to get depressed that way, or you're going to get fearful by moving this way. It's about owning both parts of you, because there is a part of you that wants a better life and wants to move forward and wants to grow, and there is a part that is fearful and terrified and wants to be safe and wants to stay in comfort zones. Both parts are good, aren't they? Both parts. But the part that wants to have a better life and to grow, has that got a positive part? Of course it has. And what about the opposing part that wants you to be safe and feel okay? Is that good for you? Of course. So it's not listening to either one and then going, right, you're the one that's going to win. It's listening to them both and going, you're both going to win. What? Because it's the only way that you're going to do it. It's not a war. It's not about killing the fearful part, and equally, it's not about killing this part so that we've got no dreams and we're not going to grow. It's about life, and anything in nature grows incrementally. Look at life. Go out there. I mean, today is a miserable, horrible day, really. It's sort of dark, and I haven't seen any sun. It's been raining most of the day. The clocks went back recently, so it's now 4:15. And it's like getting really dark, and it's like, oh, summer. And I was on a beach literally, 6 weeks ago somewhere. Like, I went to Devon with my family, my mum and my sister and my brother and their prospective families. But incrementally from that, when I was on a beach where it was quite warm, late September, to this reality, it's chalk and cheese. It's night and day, because literally it looks a bit like night right now. But it was incremental. Each day was a shift. It wasn't suddenly, suddenly dark and wet and cold. Okay, we can have these big shifts in temperature and weather, but in life, things usually are about small shifts, and that's nature. So be like nature, because you are nature. If I was to say anything, it would be about loving yourself. Loving yourself, and this is the same with almost every client who I see. If you're loving yourself, you're doing both things together. You are admitting that there's a part of you that wishes to grow, and then you're nurturing that and honouring that and respecting that. And then there's a part of you that's fearful, and again, owning that, being honest with that, loving that. Every single one of us has both of those parts inside of us, and there's no one better place. Everybody's on their own journey. Everybody's on their own path. Everyone's on a different level of, if you want to go down to souls, maybe everybody's on a different soul level or soul path or soul development. There's no better place. The only place is where you currently are. And when you can make peace, this is where I am. This is what I'm currently experiencing. And observe what you're currently experiencing. Don't think that my place or anything else is better. It's still an experience. I still have fears to this day. I still have things to work through. But it's no different than when I was working through stuff before. I've got more freedom. I've got more choices. That's something that is offered to you. But you'll never stop having challenges. So the resistant parts that are within me are still there. But they're resistant towards moving maybe even more into the public eye, or doing things where my unconscious goes, oh, well, I've got this far, but you want me to go that far? Well, it's like, how far do you want me to go? Well, higher self kicks in and goes, all the way, which means like, what? You want me to completely abandon all of my fears? And if we're going to do that, then we're going to become quite enlightened. And I think that's the invitation that's within all human beings. And certainly if you use the Enneagram as a tool, then it's about coming out of that need to defend, out of that need to protect, because you're afraid, and out of that need to promote because you are seeking love outside of you. It's all unfolding, everything, a whole lot of consciousness. Consciousness in totality, as well as your own individual consciousness, and allowing that to be the thing that's happening, and just trusting in that, letting that guide you. And letting that be the path, because it is. There is a Sufi teaching about spirituality, and it says there are 2 rules. Now, don't really like rules personally, but I actually really like this one. And it says there are 2. And then on the spiritual path, it says rule 1, begin. So that means begin, and that means wherever. It means opening up to an intelligence outside of this intelligence, that there's an intelligence in life. And you can trust that intelligence and rely on that intelligence to lean on that intelligence. The second rule is continue. And that's it. Begin and continue. Well, when's the end point? Right, when is the end point? It's constant and it's eternal and it's growth. So you could say to the tree, Okay, so when do you begin? Well, okay, there's the acorn. Well, okay, but where did the acorn come from? The acorn came from the tree. So are we going to say that this is the beginning point? It's like the chicken and the egg, which came first? Okay, let's go. The life of the tree. So we could say the beginning point is we put the acorn in the ground, or it naturally finds its way into the ground, and it then continues to grow, and big healthy tree, and then gets to an age. It's got to have to happen at some point. It's going to start to die. It's going to die, and then it gets down into whatever, breaks down, goes back into the earth again, and then what? Is that the end? Or does it just continue? Because then what goes into the earth then becomes minerals and all the rest of it, which then gives birth to or helps another oak tree. And it's just, it's beyond imagination. It's beyond realms of thought. It's like trying to teach a goldfish about crossing the road. It's just nuts. You can't get into it. It's too vast and it's too intelligent. It's too beautiful. It's too lovely. And it's just too nice just to let go and let life. When you can do that, hey, all I can tell you is that life's just going to get a hell of a lot better. So I'm as best as I can imparting what I've known in all of these years to summarize it in 1 hour under the topic, how can I begin to treat it? Well, how can you begin to treat yourself? How can you begin to live life in a more harmonious way where you're coming out of this dis-ease and into a place where you're in more ease? Ease. What else would you like to know? I don't really know what else I could put in here. It's just my gut on this one. Okay, so just touching on diet then very briefly, I would definitely say for a majority of people, sugar, wheat, dairy is to some degree going to cost you. Eating live foods is beneficial. Eating protein for the majority of you is going to be beneficial, but that's not always the case. I would get into looking at blood type. For me, I need to eat protein. I was vegetarian in my early 20s. I then attempted to become vegan for a while, but it just didn't work for me. I still have vegan shakes to this day, and I will still eat pretty clean. I can eat a little sort of dirty food a little bit, but I feel so much better by eating clean food and food that I know that is right for me. So as I trusted my gut just then, and what came up was, I didn't search for it, it just went diet. I learned to trust what food is good for me through trusting my gut. It has to go through your gut. Right now, there's some almond butter here, sort of like peanut butter, some almond butter. And I've had some oat cakes. But now I'm feeling a little peckish and I'm going to go and make myself a vegan smoothie. Or it's a vegan protein shake. And you can get those. And I have one that's we're made from brown rice, sprouted seed brown rice. I get mine from Dolphin Fitness currently, and it helps me to feel more calm. It gives me energy, and it's a great start to the day. It's very cleansing because it's made from sprouted brown rice protein. But if you have the chocolate one or the vanilla one, it actually really tastes good. But I'm also a fast oxidizer, which means I needed to eat more protein. But, just finding out your blood type can help you. But again, it's just trusting and going into what's right for me. In as much as knowing if one person's energy is good for you, you can know whether the food that you're putting in your body is good for you or not. I think that's enough. And I think, the more that you learn to trust your intuition, your inner healer, your inner navigator, you can move nearer and further towards the reality that you would like to experience with you, which is health. I'm available for free 20-minute consultations worldwide, and I invite you to do that. You'll have to email me to book that, but you're most welcome to. I'll see you in the next video.